images now, you'll see from our examples that the new wave sort of designers use a lot of imagery in their work and quite edited imagery. Obviously, it was an increase in the digital age. It was when designers first had like real sort of easy access to digital software, so they went a bit wild with their sort of use of imagery. Same as last time, obviously you can make a new document if you want to, but I'm just going to group the typography stuff that we did before. If it's going to let me. Command-G, group it, and then I'm going to bring that down to the bottom. I'm going to name that text, and then I'm going to lock it and just hide it, and then we're back to square one with our plain document again. Now I'm going to find my new wave folder that's got all my stuff in it. Now you can see I've given you these images. Now I've given you sort of specifically sort of retro style images, quirky style images to work with. I'm going to go with this one for now. Now this is probably one of the harder ones to do, which is why I've chosen this. So if I just stick that on there, it doesn't look very great. It doesn't look very exciting, not super interesting at the moment. What we want to do, if you look at sort of new wave style, a lot of their images were cropped or cut out or sort of layered or coloured. So we're going to start by learning how to cut an image out in Photoshop. Now, if you're going for sort of a cut-up, collagey, rough textured effect, you can just go in your polygonal lasso tool and roughly go around the image like that. And you can see we get our marching ants here, which shows that we've made a selection. I'm on my image layer, so I just Command-C and Command-V, and I paste that, and then you'll see when I hide that, we get that. Now I'm not entirely happy with that. I wanted it to be a little bit more sort of perfect than that. So I'm going to go and use my magnetic lasso tool. Now we've looked at this before, and again, this can be quite hard. A lot of people use the magic wand, but you'll see what happens when I use the magic wand is that it doesn't quite get everything, and it's starting to pick bits that I don't want it to cut out as well. So the magic wand's a bit unpredictable. Now I've got it on a low tolerance up here, which means it's only selecting the certain colour that I want it to. I could try this by ticking contiguous and then try it again. And you see it only selects the outside, so I could then press delete and Command-D to get rid of those wiggly lines. And you can see it started to do it, so I could go through that way and do it like that. But you can see here it starts to get complicated. It's not really picking up the bits I want it to. It's going to take me hours and it's just not wonderful. So I'm going to undo that with Command-Z. There we go, and deselect with Command-D. So actually, if I zoom in, I'm going to start up here where it's a little bit easier and use my magnetic lasso. Now you can see it's magnetizing okay at the moment. You want to try and predict when it's going to go a bit weird and try it, so you can see it's gone a bit weird there. So if I just try and get it back on track and click, that will remind it and say, I want you to be over here, you know, sort yourself out. And that sort of locks it in place on that line there. So I'm just going to take it slow. If it does go all weird and all over the place like that one, press backspace, don't panic. You can just undo by using the backspace. Sometimes you have to press it a couple of times. This should be nice and easy. You can see it's gone off a bit there, so I'm going to click, 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 and I'm going to go around it like that. Now this is tricky work. It can take a little while, but it's worth it for this. Now with this, I'm not going to worry too much about getting this cable sort of bang on perfect. I'm just going to get it as sort of close to as I can. Now regularly clicking will just help to lock it in place. You know, you can see it does make those sort of leaps on its own, but sometimes it struggles, so I want it to go right up there, so I'm having to click to force it to go all the way up there and get that yellow bit out. Oh, and you can see it's gone off again, so I just need to press backspace. Sometimes you have to move your mouse out of the way. There we go, and then I'm going to click to remind it that that is where I want it to go. You can see it's going to struggle a bit when we get to this edge because it's very light, but I'm not too worried about that because again, we're not looking for perfection, because this is something you could be here for hours to do, but it will be worth it. So It's one of those things where you just need to take your time, have a bit of patience. The magic wand is really useful for images where you've got high contrast, where you've got clear outlines, you've got a very uncomplicated shape. You can see obviously we've got yellow on yellow here, which is one of the reasons that magic wand really struggles with this. Now I'm not going to worry about that middle bit because we're going to come back and do that afterwards. And I'm almost back where I started. Whoop, and then we got a little bit crazy over there, so I'm just going to backspace, remind it where I want it to be. Again, you can see it's gone a bit funky over there, so we'll just keep clicking to get it to do what we want it to do. Now I've chosen this image because this is probably the most difficult one to do. The other ones have got a lot higher contrast backgrounds, so you might be able to use the magic wand for those, and I'll show you those in a minute. So there we go. So now if I zoom out, Command minus, you can see we've got our main shape. So I'm just going to Command C and V, and then I'm going to hide or delete that background layer. And you can see we've just got these bits here. So I am going to see if the magic wand will work. So the magic wand, if you have this ticked, it will only find the bit that you've clicked. If you have it unticked here, it will find that bit and anywhere else that it has the same colour. So you can see it's doing that, which we don't want at the moment. Sometimes that is useful. We've got a tolerance of 5, so that's pretty low. If I go up to 15, you'll see it will select a bigger area. So tolerance is basically how picky it is. So if it's being less picky, it will pick that colour and everything that's vaguely close to that colour as well. So I'm just going to go a little bit less picky. I'm going to go 35, and it's pretty much there. So I'm going to just press delete on that layer. And then I just want to pick that bit there, press delete, and that bit there, press delete, and then just get that little bit there. And then we are done. So Command D to get rid of those wiggly lines, and that is our image. Now you can see that's a lot better. We've got something to work with. It's still not very new wave at the moment. So if I look back at my examples, you can see this image has got a purple sort of hue or tint to it, and this one has got loads of different hues and tints to it. So a lot of the new wave imagery is very heavy colorized. So we're going to do that now. So we're going to go to image up here. So whenever we're working with an image, these are our settings. So we've got things like brightness and contrast, levels. The one we're going to use is hue and saturation. So that's where we can change the colour of the image. And if I change the hue and saturation now, it's okay, it's doing a bit of something, but it's still not amazing. You'll see if I tick Colorize, then it changes completely. Now I'm changing the entire colour of the whole image. So I'm not just adding a tint over the top, I'm changing the whole thing. So for me, that's a lot nicer. So I've gone to Colorize, I'm going to change it to pink, I can change it to bright pink or dark pink. I'm going to go fairly bright. Saturation means it's either very grey or it's very heavily coloured, so we want quite heavily coloured, and I'm going to go there. So you can see that's a lot more sort of new wave style at the moment. Now, if we look at our example here, we've got different parts of the face that are cut out and coloured in different ways. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So if I go to my selection tool, now I'm just going to go for a polygonal selection tool, because I'm going to do this fairly roughly. And I'm going to go around this part of the image. So I'm just going to sort of cut out. Now you could go magnetic and you could do this a bit neater than I'm doing. And I just want that top part of the phone. You could do this with the dial, you could do this with the middle bit, you could do this with a random section, so you could just draw a random shape out of it. And again, I'm going to Command C and V, so I've got that separate. Put that back where it is, and then I'm going to go to, same thing again, hue saturation, and I'm going to change it and colorize it. Yeah, so you can see we're starting to change different parts of the image. Now actually that doesn't look too messy. So we've got that part, so we can do that. Another way to do this, so if I go back to my sort of original that I had here, before I cut it out, we could add sort of a layer of colour over the top. So if I go to my gradient tool, and I just sort of do that, so you have selected the outside, and then I can go to select inverse, and that will select everything that's inside. Now when I go to my gradient tool, if I make a new layer, and I drag, let's have a look, let's go for something like that, drag that over there, you can see it only applies in that area, so that's why I wanted to do that selection. I'm going to go for that, and then Command D to get rid of those wiggly lines, and then the same as we've done before, you can multiply and apply that over the top. So you can see again we're starting to get some funky effects. So I quite like that one, it's quite exaggerated. You could obviously take the opacity of that down so that it's not too crazy. You could obviously try all the different ones, that's quite a nice one. And then obviously if you wanted to, you could link these layers together like we've done before. So we've got three sort of image edit styles there. So we've got our colorized version, we've got our version with the gradient overlay, and then we've got our version with the sort of double colour. You could do as many sort of sections of colour. We could always do another section. We could just take a random shape out of here, go to our original layer, copy and paste it, and then do the same thing again. Colorize, and you'll see that gives us a different colour there. Let me go for bright blue this time. And again, I could play around with these effects. I could play around with what's actually happening on that layer. So I quite liked that one. We get a little bit of the pink coming through. So really what you're doing is you're getting your image in there. You're seeing if it will work with the magic wand, getting familiar with your tolerance and this contiguous. So if it's ticked contiguous, it will only select the bit that you're on. If it's unticked, then it will select that and everything of the same colour that is in the image. Getting familiar with your polygonal and magnetic lasso, and working through that process to then copy and paste out. So you create a copy from that selection, and you can see we've got loads of different layers now, so that gives us loads of options. And just playing around with those images, we've cut different sections out, we've used our image adjustments and hue saturation to colorize those areas and change the colour of them, and we're just trying to create some interesting sort of new wave style images and compositions that we can come up with. You might want to work with several images, so if I drag another one of my images in here, now this one's got a fairly simple background, so I should be able to magic wand that out in theory. Now, if you're magic wanding and it doesn't want to do it, you can see you've got this little icon here, so if I try and do that now, it's going to tell me that I can't do it. This little icon means that we can't edit that image, so I need to rasterize that like we did with our text earlier, and now that icon's gone, now I can do that. So I'm just going to go in and delete the rest of that sort of blue shadow. Again, if I'd have turned the tolerance up a little bit, I probably would have got this a bit neater. Deselect. And then you could start to layer these over the top. Of your other images. Going to quickly colorize that. And then again, thinking about your blend modes and your layers, how can you get those two things to interact? Can you create any interesting sort of overlay effects? So that one's quite nice where we're starting to see some of the foam through. Put that over the top like that. So just play around, get familiar with cutting out your images, get familiar with colorizing and using that hue saturation, and start to make some interesting compositions.